Hello and welcome to Not Another Business Podcast, where we break down business news and cultural events according to rules we've entirely made up. I'm KJ Miller, ex-corporate consultant and current CEO and co-founder of Minted Cosmetics.
And I'm Daniela Dektar-McCarthy, ex-corporate lawyer and current general counsel at Ness. And fun fact, KJ and I have been friends since our Harvard a cappella days because we are that cool. Disclaimer before we start the show, the views we express today are our own and not those of our companies. Today, we are talking about Apple's latest product release, the Apple Vision Pro, which Apple is calling its first spatial computer. I didn't realize this until starting research for the show, but this is Apple's first major product release in just about a decade since the Apple Watch was released, so this is a big deal.
It is, and I will say, in true Apple fashion, they definitely make it look like the best thing since sliced bread. Like the video that they put together to launch this thing, looks very cool, very futuristic, and that's what they're known for, like coming up with new innovations and making them look like the coolest thing ever. And so, I'm excited to talk about it because as cool as that video looked, my question is, do we need this? Do we want this? Like, what's the temperature check on this thing?
Right. Yeah. As you know, I had a very visceral reaction to the video. I immediately texted you, just FYI, I'm going to be a hater. Like, I'm not getting it. I'm not seeing it. But since doing some of the research, I think my reaction and feelings about the product have tamed a little bit. And so I'm excited to discuss why I've gone on that journey in the past, 4 days and figure out is that the right journey?
Mm-hmm. And interestingly, I sort of feel like I was the opposite. Like as soon as I saw the video, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is the future. I was all excited. And then as I started to think about it more and read more think pieces and see more TikTok videos, I started to sort of lose that enthusiasm. But I think we're sort of both ending up in the same place, which is like, we've got a lot of questions and a lot we want to talk about.
Yes, I will plug.
Okay. All right, Danny, what are you plugging today?
I am plugging the Ness card, as always. It's the first premium health and wellness card that rewards you for all the healthy spending you are doing. Every week we launch new rewards in our marketplace, which is where you can use the points you're earning from your spending. And this week, I'm particularly excited to share that we have launched a donation reward, which is to say that you can use your rewards to donate to the organization called Eat Real, which is a non-for-profit that is organized around providing healthy meals to public schools and children who might not otherwise have access to healthy meals when they are outside of the school. So if you have your Nest card and you're spending and you're earning points, you can donate 5,000 points to Eat Real. That's equivalent to a $50 value, and Nest will match up to 10,000 in donations across our card members. And this is something we are hoping to do regularly from here on out. We're calling it the Nest Does Good initiative, and I'm particularly excited to share it. So you can also actually donate even if you're not a Nest card member. Just head to nestwell.com and you'll be able to learn more about it there. What about you, KJ?
Well, I am plugging Minted Cosmetics. Minted is short for pigmented. We create everyday beauty for every hue. We are now back in stock on some of our favorite items like concealer, like our Pillow Puff sponge, like our eyeshadow sticks. So there's a lot to explore. So head on over to mintedcosmetics.com to find your perfect hue. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Okay, it's time for Flashback Friday. As a reminder, this is our segment where we take a look back at an old episode and give you a quick update. KJ, what are we flashing back to today?
Well, two quick flashbacks here. The first is about our judge and jury segment from last week, Taylor Swift. If you heard the segment, you heard us say, a whole lot about her relationship with Maddie Healy, namely that we thought it was a mess and that she exhibited a whole lot of poor judgment around how she handled it. But guess what? The update is they've broken up. So I would say that was pretty swift.
No pun intended, or pun intended.
Pun intended. Pun intended. Yeah.
Yes, she's been spotted dating an NBA player now, Austin Reeves. So she's on to the next one.
Well, good for her. Hopefully, this one will be less controversial. And then the next update is about the writer's strike. So we've spoken about this a few times. The strike is still going on, but the latest update is this week is the week that networks typically start writing for the fall, right? And so from here on out, every week that the strike continues is a week that fall programming will be delayed. So the stakes just got a lot higher for at least the network television heads. What do you think about that?
Well, now I'm wondering about the previous flashback we did, which was around whether the producers actually wanted the strike to happen to get out of expensive contracts. I'm like, is this playing out? I don't actually think that that's where their position is, particularly not the network heads. But, this is where they start feeling the pain. Hopefully it brings them to the table.
7, 16. What I saw expressed on Twitter was, for the network heads, this strike is making less and less sense by the week, but the streamers potentially are happy to let it keep going, perhaps even because of those large contracts that they might be trying to get out of that we spoke about last week. So I feel like the network heads that are not streamers really should be pushing to get back to the table. That is the only...
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, let's get into our main topic. If you're new here, just know we like to start with the facts, then move on to speculation, and finally give our final verdict. So Danny, hit us with the facts. First of all, what is the Apple Vision Pro?
Okay, so first I will provide the explanation that is straight from the horse's mouth. This is coming from Apple's press release, which came out on Monday of this week. This is what Apple is saying about the Apple Vision Pro. It is a revolutionary spatial computer that seamlessly blends digital content with the physical world while allowing users to stay present and connected to others. Vision Pro creates an infinite canvas for apps that scales beyond the boundaries of a traditional display and introduces a fully three-dimensional user interface controlled by the most natural and intuitive inputs possible, a user's eyes, hands, and voice. Featuring Vision OS, the world's first, in a way that feels like it is physically present in their space. The breakthrough design of Vision Pro features an ultra-high resolution display system that packs 23 million pixels across 2 displays and custom Apple silicone in a unique dual-chip design to ensure every experience feels like it's taking place in front of the user's eyes in real time. The press release goes on to contain a quote from CEO Tim Cook that says, "Just as the Mac introduced us to personal computing and the iPhone introduced us to mobile computing, the Apple Vision Pro introduces us to spatial computing." So that's what Apple's saying. Now, I have a question for you. Had you heard of the term spatial computing before this product release, before I read these words to you?
No, I had not, but I'm kind of into the branding here. And I like the way Tim Cook phrased it, personal computing, then mobile computing, and now we're on the next frontier, which is spatial computing. That's a very smart way to sort of to phrase it and propose like this new world we're entering into, according to Apple. So I like the phrase. I mean, it makes me think of all those futuristic movies, or like Mission Impossible, or the other Tom Cruise movies. Yeah, exactly. And there's someone using their hands to move screens around and, press virtual buttons. That's what this makes me
Did that happen in Mission Impossible, by the way? Have you seen the movie Mission Impossible?
Yeah, good point. I think I have potentially seen one Mission Impossible. It feels like something that may have happened.
Right. Okay, well, I had never heard of the term, but for sure this is what Apple is pushing. Everywhere in the press release and the demo video, in all of the news spots that they've gotten, they are talking about the Apple Vision Pro ushering in the, quote, era of spatial computing. And this is not a term I was familiar with. It's not a term Apple has randomly come up with. It has existed in the tech world. And so I do want to share, just in case, the lofty language of the press release, didn't make it super clear. Essentially, the definition of spatial computing means the use of computers to understand and interact with the 3D physical world. So spatial computing leverages tracking via sensors, cameras, depth perception, and like positional mapping to understand the user's physical environment. And it also involves the overlaying of virtual objects onto the real world, which allows you, a user, to interact and manipulate digital content in your own context via your eyes, your hands, whatever else. So that's spatial computing.
Yeah, and I wonder, how this relates to sort of existing like VR headsets. I think about Facebook's headset, which I do think, just according to the news, Apple is very much trying to avoid being compared to. But, and we have one. We both have what is it called? The Quest or the Oculus?
I think it's called the Quest, although I will forever call it the Oculus. Just like you'll forever call Meta Facebook, I will forever call the Quest the Oculus.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and in that one, when you put it on, it does not feel like, I guess, what I'm understanding Apple to mean when they say spatial computing, because I don't feel like I'm still interacting with the world around me. I feel like I put on the headset and then I am interacting with the world, the virtual world created inside the headset. Whereas my understanding of what the Vision Pro does, just based on that one video I watched, is it's sort of like you can still see your world, right? You can still see what's happening in the room around you, and then you can put up the things you want to interact with, the apps, the PowerPoints, the movies, whatever. You can put them up on screens while still looking at and seeing the world around you. But that's just sort of my sense. I feel like you've probably got more facts around like what this thing actually does.
Well, I think what you're hitting on is a distinction Apple very deliberately wants to make, and it is one that is the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. But ultimately, both of these things are spatial computing, which is something I did not realize until, prepping for this episode. Because even though you feel removed from the world around you when you are using the Quest, ultimately, a lot of what you're doing to manipulate things in the virtual world that you're in is via your physical movements, right? With the Quest, you're holding onto joysticks, but it is the interaction between your physical world and this virtual world that you're in. And ultimately, if you recall, probably you haven't done it in a while because no one returns to the Quest even after they buy it. But when you put it on, you kind of have to, it does map the space around you so that you don't, walk into your furniture and whatever else, right? So that process is spatial computing.
Okay.
But yes, this difference between VR, AR is definitely one that Apple wants us to make, and is trying to, trying to sell it as one of the key features, is that this is the way to interact with digital content in your space, as opposed to a way to escape your space and go to a different world. Although that is also possible. So let me break down what the Apple Vision Pro actually does. And this is based on about 10-minute YouTube video that Apple put out. First off, let's describe what it looks like. It looks like a headset. Okay, it does look like a headset, though Apple you will not hear Apple call it that. It does look like a headset.
What do they call it?
I feel like they've avoided a term entirely. I have seen coverage in news refer to them as goggles.
Okay.
But I don't know if like Apple is pushing people to call it goggles or
just call it Vision Pro. Like they don't want to use the word headset. And is that, I mean, can we assume that's because they are trying to avoid the comparison with Meta and the Quest?
I do think so. Yeah. I don't know if that's fair, but I think they are trying to get away from an aversion people have when they think about, okay, I need to place this thing on my head, because people associate with headsets like I'm not interacting with the world, which Apple wants you to understand you are interacting with the world, and that I have this big weight on my head. You know, and I think they want you to not think about that. So they don't call it a headset. The front of the Vision Pro is a glass pane. It's a single glass pane that you can see through, and others can see through as well. So if you're wearing the Vision Pro and I'm looking at you, you see me, I see your eyes. That is very different from the Meta Quest.
Right.
The part that goes around your head is a 3D knit material, which I think is very intentional to make it theoretically more comfortable than some other headsets that are out there. And then, although Apple tries to hide it as well as they can in the video, there is a cord that connects the headset to a battery pack that's like the size of a small phone, and that cord presumably like rests in your pocket if you're standing up, or if you're sitting down could rest beside you. But it is not on the headset, which I think was a choice to make the headset less heavy and more comfortable.
Right.
Although I will say it is, you know, playing on the patriarchy, because women don't always have pockets.
I was just about to say that. Like, if I'm literally, I wish all of my clothing had pockets, but a lot of it doesn't. So if I'm wearing an outfit that doesn't have pockets, I'm just supposed to carry around this battery pack everywhere I go.
Yeah, or get yourself a fanny pack, something.
Okay.
I happen to have 2 fanny packs, so I'm in you know, in a good place to wear the Vision Pro. But yes, I think you either need to be seated so it can rest somewhere, or somehow you need to find a way to hold it.
Yeah. And I have read, you can tell me if this is true, or I've seen people complain about the fact that even with this little external battery pack, apparently it only lasts for 2 hours.
Correct. It is supposed to last about 2 hours. You do have the option of like plugging in, but obviously then you are physically restricted far more than if you were just attached to the battery pack. So yes, 2 hours right now. And then the last thing I'll just say about the appearance is it definitely has that classic Apple look. Uses, you know, the aluminum and space gray color. It is sleeker than other VR AR headsets out there. So that's you know what it looks like. How it works: the user puts it on, and the dashboard of Apple apps that everyone like is familiar with, if they already use Apple products, is projected in front of them, just into their space. You ultimately can navigate from app to app, so you can navigate through that dashboard with your eyes, with your eye movements. And you're tapping to select or scrolling using your hands. And I wasn't a little unsure of this when I first watched the video. I was like, what are you tapping? And what, like, you know, what are you touching? You're not touching anything. There is no joystick. There's no controller. So you somehow can just tap your little fingers together, and the Vision Pro is picking this up and enables you to select an app out of a dashboard of many. And then you also can use your voice to dictate. So if you're searching something, you know, you can say, search Not Another Business podcast.
Yeah. Which is what you would
which
say.
Which is what you're
obviously.
searching. Yeah, exactly. Everyone would be searching this. Yes.
Well, I will just say this is the part to me when they started showing this screen and what it would look like, and then the woman interacting just using her fingers and her voice. That is what got me all excited, because I do feel like other headsets that we've seen just feel clunky, and the way that they at least depicted this did feel much more seamless and really just freaking cool. You know, like it feels like something that I don't know how often I would use it, but I do feel like it'd be super cool to use. And this was one of the things, the like touching in the air and just like using your voice and using your eyeballs, by the way, to like, you know, select different things. That felt super cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had the opposite reaction. When I was watching this woman put all these displays up, I was just like, who needs this? Like, why, you know, and one of the features is you can make it as big as you want, right? So like as big as your room is. And you can make, if you're watching a movie, it feel like a truly cinematic experience by making it 100 feet wide. And obviously the sound is by your ears, so it feels like it's enveloping you, right? And particularly with the woman who was putting up, different windows that she's otherwise looking at, I just thought, like, why do I need this?
Mm-hmm.
But then watching it a few more times, and that woman in particular, I think they're pitching using this for work. They have a few different models who are having different experiences in the video, and this woman who's toggling between different windows. In particular, they're talking about her using the Vision Pro for her job, theoretically, although she's in a hotel room for some reason. And after thinking about it, I realized, I guess this is like the ultimate multi-monitor display. Like, how a lot of people say, I'm more productive when I go into the office because I have my dual monitors, or I'm more productive when I have my setup. And in theory, I guess this is the ultimate dual monitor, right?
Yeah.
Except you can have many, many monitors, essentially, right? Because you can toss it up all around you.
Right. But can you know what I just thought about? Can you type? Because I didn't see anyone in any of the videos typing.
I didn't see anyone typing. I think you dictate.
Okay, but what if I'm building an Excel model? I'm dictating my formulas and my additions and
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think maybe you're like, cell B2 equals sum, open parentheses.
Nope.
A2 colon D2 close parentheses.
I'm out the game. I have to be able to type. I actually hadn't thought about that.
By the way, you can tell how sophisticated my formulas are because that's about all I can do. Sum A2 to D2. Thank you.
I hadn't thought about that until this exact moment. But if you are pitching this to people who work, most people who work spend a lot of time typing. I'm typing up emails. I'm typing Slack messages. I'm building a lot of models. I'm typing. And they did not showcase that. And my assumption is they're not going to have, well, maybe they will, but like a virtual keyboard. Because that feels...
So I know that you can hook up the Vision Pro to like a gaming controller. Like so that you can play the games that you already know, which I think would require too many sophisticated movements, but with just like a massive display, like bigger than your TV. I'd have to assume, although I don't know this for sure, I would have to assume that if you can like hook up a controller, you could probably hook up like the Apple keyboard. I mean, that would seem like a miss if you couldn't.
Yeah. Okay, I believe that and now I am sort of remembering a part of the video where it looks like they are connecting. They're like, and it connects with your existing Apple products. But then if I have to be on my computer to type, but I've got on the headset, I mean, maybe I'm trying to picture that. I guess it's that. Again, I've got the multi-display, so I'm typing, and then I'm choosing this display and typing over there. I don't know. It's a little.
So I will say, I think I'm going to cut to the chase here a little bit because I think you're getting there. The like big takeaway for me from this video, and I will go into some of the other features, is that everything is just big. Like you can make everything big, and you can have multiple big things around you. Like that's what I think this Vision Pro does. I mean, that is a reductionist and overly simplistic, but sometimes it's helpful to be a little reductionist, and I think that is like the biggest takeaway is that there's more technology to it. It interacts with your environment, right? Like if the display will change automatically based on the amount of light in your room. Right. So you can imagine, right now on your computer, you have to toggle the brightness button at the top, but you don't need to do that. This is interacting and responding to the world around you. It casts shadows, which I guess makes things feel cool. I don't really know why you need your app to cast a shadow, but it does. But yeah, everything can just be big, right? So you can make pictures and videos take up the whole room if you're watching a movie, although the battery won't last long enough, but you can make the screen feel huge. You can turn your ceiling into a sky. If you're sitting on a plane, this I found interesting, you can make, I guess, dull out everyone around you. And just make it so that you're only seeing the movie, which is pretty cool. Actually, you get to control how immersive the experience is. So there's a dial at the top of the headset that you turn, and that dictates like am I going to actually be able to see the person next to me or someone walk into the room, or do I just want to be totally immersed in whatever experience I'm in? I will say one piece that felt pretty cool is they basically showed someone meditating with the Vision Pro, and because there are elements of VR, although they don't talk about it, but they do show it, you can have, like, via the mindfulness app, you can be, you know, submerged in this orb that is super calming during your meditation session, excuse me. So,
and
yeah.
I will say I thought the airplane example was really cool. I like the idea of, because I do tend to work on planes, I like the idea of being on a plane and I can put up my work, and I guess my laptop keyboard, again, not entirely sure how that works, but then that's all I see, right? I don't see the flight attendants going up and down. I don't see the people next to me, and the headset lets you do noise reduction, right? So I don't have to hear what's happening around me. I can just like focus in. Or like you said, if I'm not working and I want to watch a movie, I can put on the movie or put on the episode of The Office, whatever it is, and like have it fully immersed. I do think that's cool. And if I translate that to other times when I'm around other people, like on the Amtrak, I ride the Amtrak a lot, maybe people on the subway, I don't know how safe you'd feel, just like, I feel like on New York subway, you gotta mind your P's and Q's, because you don't know what's happening, so I don't know if I would do it there, but you know, other places where a lot is happening around you, the idea of a fully immersive experience does sound kind of cool.
Yes, I agree. I think there are two other features we should discuss. One is the 3D camera. So you can take photos and videos with depth. You have to be wearing the headset to do it, obviously, but you know, you can capture moments with depth and then rewatch it with depth. This immediately makes me think of Harry Potter pictures. You know, and I don't know if I'm just very morbid, but my immediate thought is like, oh my God, if you can, how nice would it be to have memories with your family, and then when people are gone, you can really feel like you're in it with them, you know? Now, is that enough to make me purchase this Vision Pro? Probably not, but it does definitely seem like the future. Of course, though, you have to be wearing the headset initially to take that photo and video, which seems like a little bit of a inconvenience.
Right. Yeah.
But okay, so that's a feature. And then one last piece, which goes to the workspace, like using the Vision Pro for work, although I guess it's for social too. You know, we talked a lot about the Quest avatars and how bad they were. What the Vision Pro does is, using the sensors and cameras in the headset, it takes a scan of your face, and when you are talking to people, when you're FaceTiming them, it projects what they're calling your 3D persona, not using the term avatar, your 3D persona, and then it tracks your hand movement, facial movement, to make the 3D persona move similar to how you are. So if you're wearing the headset and you're FaceTiming with another person who may or may not be wearing the headset, they're not seeing you with the headset on, they're seeing your 3D persona unobscured by the headset.
Yeah, which is cool. Which is cool that they are able to do that. I mean, I just have to say, the amount of technology and technological advances that are present in this headset, I mean, you have to at the very least stand in awe of that. It does seem like quite a feat what they have accomplished. I haven't seen anything like this on the market. I feel like there have been a lot of people who've reviewed it, like media outlets who've reviewed it, who have said, even if I don't know exactly how I would use this thing, it is without doubt the coolest thing I've ever seen. You know, like, and just such an advancement of technology. I think you at least have got to be a little bit awed by that, and this is one piece of that, right? Like, I put this headset on, and then all of its 3D sensors and cameras create a 3D version of me to showcase to the world out there. I mean, that alone feels like it would take a ton of time and a ton of people to figure out.
Right. Yeah, and it to the point about technology, it's using like a machine learning model to map your face, right? So there's like hardware that's really impressive, and then software that's really impressive, all coming together to create this product. That I agree, I haven't seen anything like it. So now I think we should get into real people who've used it and their reactions.
Yeah.
Now, Apple has been very, they've been pretty protective of the product release, and so they have not let anyone really film themselves while using it. Except I did see one video of Robin Roberts from Good Morning America. She was able to film herself while using it, but they haven't really let anyone else film themselves while using it, and they limited folks to 30 minutes at a time of using the headset. But
Well,
we got.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, my spidey senses are going off because I feel like part of the reason they may have limited you to 30 minutes is because any more than that, and that like motion sickness might kick in, that a lot of people reported feeling with the Facebook's Quest. I certainly felt, now granted I was using it when I was pregnant, but I certainly felt a little motion sick when I used it. And so I feel like that 30 minutes, that feels very purposeful to me.
I agree with you, and I think it's not just the motion sickness, but also just discomfort from wearing the headset. So, and I'm kind of giving away the rub of what I'm about to share. But there's one particular video, that review video by Joanna Stern, who's a Wall Street Journal tech columnist. She made a great review video that's on YouTube, and this is what she said about it. It feels like Apple stuck a giant Apple Watch to my head, in a good way. By far the best AR VR headset I've used, but it is still a headset. And so she took video and pictures of herself after wearing it for 30 minutes. And you can see there are red marks on her forehead. There's red marks on her nose from the pressure of this headset. She did share that Apple claims that pressure will get better over time because they're going to offer more sizes for this piece that like rests on your nose that are not available right now. But it's still a headset that's sitting on your face. So, how much better? I don't know. And she also did say that she felt a little queasy after wearing it, not particularly when moving from AR to VR. So when she used that dial to move the experience from not totally immersive to totally immersive, she said that was a bit nauseating.
Interesting.
Ultimately, her conclusion was that it's not worth the price tag. I know we haven't talked about it. We will get there. Not worth the price tag, but she did come away feeling like seeing the digital in your real world feels like the next big thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I want to watch this review video because that last part, that last thing you just said, that I feel like is sort of my takeaway as well. I mean, I know we're not in speculation, but I feel like where I am right now is Apple's on to something. They're on to something. There's a there. I don't know how many people, obviously like the tech nerds and the rich are probably going to buy one just to be able to try this thing. But I don't know how much, how excited the general public is going to be to spend a bunch of money on this thing and then use it every day. But I do feel like spatial computing and bringing the digital into our real world, I do feel like that is the next wave. But I don't know that I think they're capturing it in exactly the right way yet.
Okay, you were hitting on so many things. I think we just need to do away with facts and speculation because it's all great combo. This is the deal. First, let's get into price because I think it has to be part of the conversation. The Apple Vision Pro costs a pretty penny. Lucky for you, it's not going to be available till January, so you can start saving now. But it is $3,499 starting price. And they're always going to be like, add this accessory, blah, blah, blah. So you're walking away spending a ton of money.
Yeah.
In Robin Roberts' interview with Tim Cook, she asks if he thinks this is an item that an average person can afford. And Tim's answer was this: I don't know. I think people will make different choices depending upon their current financial situations and so forth. The engineering and depth of an engineering in it is mind-blowing. You've got more than a 4K experience in each eye. Of course, it doesn't come for free. It costs something to do that, but I think it's a great value, which I think sums it up to like, no, clearly not everyone's going to be able to afford it, but this is a really expensive piece of tech to make, and so that's where the price is. I think very astutely, someone commented on Joanna Stern's video saying, I'm willing to bet that the next version of the Vision Pro in 2025 or 2026 will see a massive price drop. As this is a first-gen Pro device, Apple is setting a high price ceiling so that when the next one comes out and is at $1,500 to $2,000, we will all be amazed and demand will increase. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen it before with Apple products. Like when they first launched, they're extremely expensive. And then not only do next generations get a little bit cheaper, but then you can also start purchasing like the refurbished versions of the whatever, you know, like a refurbished iPad right now you can get for like $200, right? Or less. So I do think it's going to follow that wave and become a bit less pricey. But the question still remains, what's the use case? Right? Like even if it's, I mean, there is a price point at which if it's low enough, people will buy it just to try it. Right. I think if it's 400 or less, you're going to get a lot of people who are just like, well, I just want to try this thing. But I think above 1,000, if I don't have a real use case in mind for this thing, I think your market shrinks pretty considerably.
Yeah, and so the consensus from what I've seen from reviewers thus far is this is an amazing piece of technology. Right now, the use cases seem very limited, but also what Apple is clearly doing right now by releasing it is to get developers to start developing and making amazing experiences and making use cases that Apple itself has not, you know, come up with, and to get people more excited about what is possible. I want to talk about what you said, which is this idea of, you know, of projecting the digital onto the physical being what seemed most compelling to you, because I think this hits on the distinctions Apple is making and how it is pitching the headset as compared to what Meta did with the Quest, right? Because Meta talked nonstop about virtual reality and Apple is talking nonstop about augmented reality, right? Like where the Vision Pro, according to Apple, is not supposed to take you away from your real world. It's supposed to enhance your real world by adding all the things that you do in your computer to it. And, you know, you can imagine that this is kind of the first real, tangible step to what people have talked about with like the Google glasses, you know, like something that you could step out of your home wearing without looking like a psychopath, and learn about the surroundings in front of you, you know, just enhance what you're seeing by having a computer that's also seeing what you're seeing and responding to it.
Yeah, and of course, I also thought about Google Glass when thinking about this and how, I mean, that was just like a pretty epic failure. It was very cool tech, right? And you had some of the tech nerds willing to spend I mean, I think that thing was like $10,000 or more. You had a few folks who interacted with it and liked it, but for the most part, people decided this is weird. It is weird for you to be to be here with me, but like looking at your Google Glass and interacting, you know, with your hands and whatever at something that I can't see, that's weird. And I think similarly, this thing, like, yes, I think there's a reason why all of the use cases they showed with people wearing this thing were people by themselves alone in a room. Because I feel like if I walked into a room of folks wearing this thing, they'd be like, girl, take that off. Like, what are you doing? This is not how we want to interact with you in this world. Okay. Like in this world, we would like to see your actual face and interact with you in that way. And also, I think if I'm in a room full of people, but I still have my Quest on, the only reason I'd still have my Quest on is if I'm doing stuff while I'm in the room with you, right? There'd be no other reason for me to still wear it, in which case I'm not giving you my full attention. So now it feels, and I think some reviews have mentioned this, very isolationist, because I'm not doing this with other people. But what is it that I need to do alone in a room? Well, my work. But is this enhancing my work so much? I mean, yes, like you said, I can make everything big. Okay, I can blow my spreadsheet up to the size of the wall. I don't know why I need to do that. I have never thought to myself,
Right.
I wish this spreadsheet were the size of my wall. So again, I get confused by the use case because I can't use it in a group of people. But the only thing I would really need it for to be alone is my work. I, I don't know. I start getting confused.
Yeah. So you're right. There are many other reporters who are having the same reaction. There was a Yahoo News report that quoted a like I think they call him an Apple watcher, basically someone who just follows Apple's every move. His name is Matt Birchler, and he said, "I think the actual things people use this headset for will be things they do alone. As soon as you're interacting with someone in person, the headset's coming off. Wearing this thing at a kid's birthday party will be seen as borderline psychotic behavior." Right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're saying. It doesn't make sense to be wearing it when you're with people. And I think that was part of my visceral reaction when I first saw the video, right? Like one of the things Apple touts is the fact that you are still connected to the world. You can see people in the room. They can see you. But my gut reaction is, but why do I want to have this headset on when I'm seeing people in the world? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be wearing this headset, and I don't want you to be wearing this headset. I want to see your forehead, like without a glass pane in between. So it really wasn't until I started watching the demo and understanding the use cases for when you're alone, like at work, that I started understanding, oh, maybe there is a circumstance in which I would use it, and it wouldn't be detracting from my experience, right? Where I would see this detracting from social interactions. I wouldn't necessarily see it detracting from my work interactions because I work remote. I work from my home. I don't have anyone, near me in an office. But then I think this goes to the other point you were making, which is, okay, but this is $3,500. Like, do I want to spend $3,500 on a work use case? Like, and is it worth it for my Excel spreadsheet to be the size of my wall and for me to be able to have 5 displays that are huge rather than 2?
Yeah. Well,
Probably
what
not.
what I just thought about in terms of use case, because, right now it feels like a solution in search of a problem, right? Like really, really cool tech, really, really great, advancements here, but like who needs it? And that to me, I almost feel like because Apple is so rich, their market cap is, in the trillions, not the billions. It almost feels like they are releasing it to the world, knowing they haven't fully figured out the use case, hoping that the information that comes back to them tells them what the use case is, right? Like, we don't fully know, okay? We made this demo video of homegirl in a hotel looking at spreadsheets. Is that how y'all are going to use it? We don't know, but we know we built something very cool. And now we're sort of like, let's get it out there and let's see. Because the thought I had was, I'm trying to think about like, okay, if I'm able to interact with my world in 3D, but in augmented reality, that feels like the sort of thing that maybe could be good for a surgeon, right? If I could somehow see a 3D body in front of me and simulate whatever the like cool surgery is that I need to do, could that be a good use case? Because like I think there are already medical surgery like simulations, I think on computers and things, but I don't know how 3D they are. Something like that where I feel like I'm interacting, maybe that could be cool. Or like other scientific sort of advancements where you need to like figure out, can you do a thing that's very, very difficult and complex, but you don't want to figure that out on the real thing, right? Like you want to figure it out in the simulation. So basically like simulations. Are there simulations that could be made better with this tech and where the simulation matters a great deal? That's the sort of thing that comes into my mind. And I feel like once you put the tech into the world, maybe you will get people saying like, oh, it's good for this. And it reminds me of, I remember when they came out with the iPad, okay? And I remember thinking, what would I use this iPad for? I truly couldn't wrap my mind around what I would use the iPad for. And then Kadar and I went apartment hunting. We were moving into New York, or moving in together. Or no. The first time I moved to New York. So the first time I moved to New York, so much earlier, and I was apartment hunting, and the real estate agent had an iPad, and this is like one of my first times seeing it out in the wild. And she was sort of like clicking through other listings we could go to while we were at a listing. She was like, okay, we can go see this one next. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, because like you don't want to walk around with a computer all day and have to like flip it open every time you want to see something. But also if you were just showing it to me on your phone, that would be, kind of small. So now I can get like just a better view of this, right? And then all of a sudden I saw a use case where I thought it made sense. So I just am wondering, is that what Apple is going for here? Like they don't know exactly how people are going to use it, but they know it's cool and they want to figure out.
Okay, two thoughts. First of all, I didn't have that experience with the iPad, but I absolutely had it with the Apple Watch. When the Apple Watch came out, I was like, that is so dumb. Like, why do I need to be able to get my phone calls on my watch? Like, the phone is already small. I never leave my house without my phone. Why do I need it on my wrist? Now, what does Daniela wear every day on her wrist? Her Apple Watch. Okay, so I was definitely wrong there. So that's just my personal anecdote. The second thing is, Apple has failed with products before, but not really in the 2000s. Okay, they haven't really done the failure thing in the 2000s. They did cancel a product release in 2019, but that was for a much smaller product, which was just like a charging pad to charge your Apple Watch, iPhone, and AirPods all at once. But so that's obviously a relatively small endeavor compared to the Vision Pro, right? They don't like put something out as big as the Vision Pro and fail, at least not in the 2000s. So is this method of putting out something where you don't necessarily know the answer something that just uniquely works for Apple?
Well, certainly something on this scale, something on this scale, because I do think this is risky. It is, I'm guessing it was extremely expensive to develop, and now they're charging an extremely high price for it. And I think only an Apple can do that, because we have all experienced the quality of their products. We've experienced how nice it is, the ecosystem that they've built. If you do have an iPhone and a MacBook and an iPad and an Apple Watch, how those things all work so seamlessly and nicely together. We've all experienced that. So there is a willingness to pay more for what feels like that sort of classic Apple experience. But it is a risk. I think it's a big risk. And the fact that they moved forward with it, even after seeing how panned Facebook's version of this thing was, to me means they've got some balls, but they've also got some
after. Started designing in 2014, retail release date 2014. Yeah, it came out. Pre-orders began on April 10th, 2015. So yes, he was CEO with the Apple Watch launch.
Okay, do you want to though answer that more like formally, just so when you edit?
Yes. Tim Cook. Well, is it a yes, or what was the question? Was he CEO when it was?
Yeah, I think the question was, is this his first big product launch?
No, this is not his first big product launch. Tim Cook has been CEO since 2011, and the Apple Watch was put out for pre-orders in 2015. So this, I guess, is his second big launch.
Okay, because what I wondered was, I am still skeptical, and I sort of wondered, like, is this Tim Cook trying to prove that he can be a part of Apple's great big legacy of innovation? And so, knowing that he, came out with was CEO when Apple Watch came out, maybe he feels like he has a little bit less to prove, but I don't know. Like the Apple Watch felt cool, but not necessarily. There were other wearables on the market, right? In fact, I think Samsung at that point had already launched some sort of like smartwatch. But this feels, it feels like a very big feat in computing. And so part of me wonders, is there a bit of a push to push out a new technology while Tim Cook is still CEO, even if it's not super clear how in the world people are going to use this thing?
Yeah, I have two kind of high-level business principles that I want to discuss with you about this. The first is just how powerful trust in a brand is in this use case, if this succeeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can develop trust with your consumer based on both, the brand that you're putting out and just past products, like that's the only way this works.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is this a great example of like the first mover advantage being kind of a farce? Right? Like people talk about first mover advantage. I don't know if you want to give a kind of business school explanation of that for people who maybe aren't familiar with the term.
Yeah, it's largely what it sounds like. Essentially, it means because you're first to market with a particular product or service, your name becomes attached to the thing and becomes what people think of when they're thinking about that product or service, and that gives you a bit of an advantage over your competitors.
Yeah, and so I think to the extent that the Quest and the Vision Pro are in the same category, like, is this proof that the first mover advantage is limited? And actually, maybe there's like a second mover advantage from learning from the mistakes of the first mover.
Totally. And that's actually something we talk about in business school as well. This idea that, yes, there is an advantage to being the first mover, but there is also a disadvantage. I mean, you can think of other companies and other brands that have essentially built a market and then that other people perfected. I think about like Blue Apron, right? Blue Apron, as far as I know, not doing well, but they sort of invented the market for, home meal delivery kits. Now other companies have come along and figured out how to do it profitably. Not that many, by the way. It's still like a really difficult market, but there are other companies that have figured out how to tweak the model and do it profitably. But Blue Apron sort of paid the price of moving first and figuring out like all of the mistakes that can be made and how expensive a business model like that is to run. So yeah, I think there is such a thing as first mover advantage, but there are also disadvantages to being first. I think Facebook is seeing that. And I think to your point around trust, yes, Apple has built a lot of trust with their customers for sure. And that is going to take them a certain length, right? Certain number of people are going to buy this thing just because they trust Apple and because it looks cool and they know Apple delivers cool experiences. But that's not going to be enough to make this a sustainable market, right? And so that is the question. That's the risk I think they're taking. They know they're going to have some of their diehards who will buy this thing, right? They'll probably make however many millions of dollars just from those folks. But for it to become a multi-billion-dollar product, which all the rest of their products are, it's going to take, I think, a lot more than that upfront trust. It is going to take someone really figuring out and then helping the rest of us understand what the real use case is for this thing.
Yeah, I think two big things need to happen. And I can't believe I'm saying this because of how negative my reaction was to the initial demo video. But I think if these two things happen, it'll probably succeed, which is one, developers need to deliver. They need to give us the explanation of the use cases that Apple has not. And the price needs to come down, which I think is inevitable because this is what Apple does.
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing I want to talk about is this point about isolation. I want to just dive into that a little bit more. If this is ushering in an era of spatial computing and everyone's going to be doing this, how concerned are we about this creating a more systemic problem in society with respect to isolation?
Yeah. So you know what? I think it probably is ushering in an era of spatial computing. What I don't think it's ushering in or will usher in is an era where we all are using headsets all the time. I just can't see that. I think I have to believe if spatial computing is going to really start to become a thing, someone is going to figure out the technological advances it takes to allow us to do that without strapping a huge helmet to our face. I have to believe that because, to me, it would make more sense if like there was some sort of bracelet or even the Apple Watch that I could wear and I could press a button and that would bring up virtual screens around me that I could interact with and then quickly like sort of put away, right? That would make sense to me. And I think we've seen sort of those sorts of things in sci-fi movies or whatever, where the tech sort of evolves to a point where instead of looking at your phone, I think we've seen this in like Black Mirror episodes, it's actually like it just shows up in front of you and you interact with the screen that's in front of you virtually, and then it goes away. Clearly, we have not figured that out yet. And if Apple hasn't figured it out, I'm guessing nobody has. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think that is how spatial computing is going to actually start to really permeate society, because I truly can't envision a world where we are all walking around with these huge helmets on. And yeah, theirs looks more comfortable than the Quest, but it still looks bulky. It still does not look like something I'd want to be walking down the sidewalk in.
Yeah, basically until it's on a contact lens. That's what needs to happen. It needs to be on your contact lens, maybe controlled, I don't know, by something on your wrist or whatever it is. But like ultimately, there needs to be zero disruption to your face.
I agree. Zero disruption to your face. I don't know that I think it has to be a contact lens. I do think
it's got to be. Only way.
I do think it could be something wearable. I just think it can't be something obstructive. And this to me feels obstructive.
Yeah, I think related to that, I'll also just share what some reviewers said about their experience with interacting with the 3D personas. There was a New York Times reporter, Brian Chen, who said when he started interacting with someone who was supposed to be an Apple like customer care person, he immediately got an ick sensation, which he said is what technologists have long described to be the uncanny valley sensation, which is basically a feeling you get when a human sees a machine that looks too much like a human. He's like, yep, this is a technological feat, but it is not how I want to see everyone every day at all. And he actually went home that day and like talked to his wife about that ick feeling, and she asked him, look, your mother's aging. It's not easy to get to her. Would you want to talk with her using this? Is that like an example use case? And he said, absolutely not. I would want to talk to her through FaceTime because that's real. I don't want to talk to a 3D persona of her. And so I think either we need to get to a place where people don't have that ick feeling, the uncanny valley feeling, which I don't know if that's possible. I think, or that will just also be a limitation in how much this can be integrated into our daily lives, because ultimately I do think people want social interaction, right?
Yeah, totally. All right, well, I feel like we've looked at this thing left, right, and center, 3D otherwise. So what's your final verdict?
My final verdict is that I hope my brother-in-law buys it. He is one of these diehard Apple folks, because I want to try it, but I will not be buying it yet. It is too expensive, and I don't think the use cases have been thought out. Apple knows it, and so I will be patiently waiting for the next iteration when it is more affordable and when we understand exactly what it is for. But I, despite my initial reaction to the demo video, think that it is definitely possible for us to get there because of Apple's track record and just
someone does purchase it. I think of Tom as being a little bit of a diehard sort of Apple
He
guy,
is not spending $3,500 on this. I will not. That is not. I mean, we don't actually prevent each other from making big purchases, but you can't hide this one from me. So I don't know.
I feel like you could come home one day and he's in the living room with it on. But and if that does happen, then I would like to try you guys's. But I will say I am excited to see if people come up with real use cases for this product and what they are. That excites me. But yeah, I personally will not be purchasing.
Okay, it's time for Judge and Jury. And if you're new here, this is the segment where we dive into recent news and ask whether the events of the day display good or bad judgment. This week, we are covering the decision by Warner Brothers CEO to fire CNN CEO Chris Licht after a tumultuous 18-month ride leading the network. For those who are not familiar, Chris Licht was brought in to help fix CNN's ailing ratings in the wake of the 2020 election. Whether it's appropriately attributed to him or not, he never really did that. More recently, he has sparked controversy after moving anchor Don Lemon to a morning show and then ultimately firing him for disparaging remarks that Lemon made about Nikki Haley, saying she was past her prime. And then he also sparked controversy over a recent decision to host a town hall with Donald Trump. Over the weekend, there was a 15,000-word article that The Atlantic published about his leadership, in which he was critical over CNN and how it covered COVID-19. And there was apparent fallout from that, with employees of the network who were already struggling with his leadership hearing this criticism for the first time, and so losing further trust in him. And so just a couple days after the Atlantic article came out, he's been ousted. So what do we think about the decision to get rid of him? Good or bad business judgment?
Yeah, it feels like pretty unequivocally good judgment. I mean, you brought him in to fix your ratings. He hasn't done that. He also then hosted a town hall for someone who led an insurrection against our country, and then allowed himself to be profiled in this Atlantic piece that, from what I've read, he just comes off looking like a terrible leader, a terrible boss, mostly a terrible person. It just seems like he hasn't done the job well, and you absolutely should have gotten rid of him. That's my take. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the morning show never clicked. There was never like a rhythm that was established. So I don't know that you can necessarily blame him for the firing of Don Lemon, but the initial move of moving him around wasn't working. The decision to host the town hall is interesting. I mean, in some ways, it is what launched CNN to such high ratings before the 2016 election, featuring Donald Trump's crazy town halls, which at the time we all thought were like entertaining in a weird way. None of us realized it would help propel him to be the president. But I think it's different now. So if the thinking was, well, this is what got us ratings the first time, I don't think that should have been applied here. And in the end, you didn't help fix the network. It's been 18 months. You know, the proof is in the pudding. So I think it's good business judgment to kick him out. Sorry.
You know what I think is an interesting J&J related to this is, so this article that The Atlantic came out with, the only reason they were able to publish such a like really revealing piece is because he agreed to be profiled by them. In fact,
Correct.
According to sources, he was excited to be profiled by them and gave them essentially unfiltered access to him wherever he was, in the office, at the gym, eating dinner. And I would say that was extremely bad judgment, because journalists are going to do journalism. Okay. And so if you are out here, you know, just giving them unfettered access to you, you have to expect that they are going to report some of the nonsense that you do and say, right? Because that obviously is going to get more clicks and more views than them just, you know, writing some puff piece. A puff piece is probably all he would have been able to write if you had given him just a 1-hour sit down interview. Okay. Because you're media trained, you know how to do a 1-hour sit down interview, but it is very hard to be polished around the clock. And so I think the ultimate show of bad judgment here is from Chris Licht himself for giving this reporter that much access to him.
That's a really interesting take. I mean, part of me wonders if the decision to participate in, you know, an Atlantic article was a last-ditch effort to kind of turn around a sinking ship. Is that turn around a sinking ship? I don't know. Whatever, you know, to turn around a ship moving in the wrong direction. That's the expression, right? Whatever. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he saw the writing on the wall that he hadn't improved the ratings. There were these two controversies. People weren't loving his leadership. Maybe if I could get the media or the public behind me, I can salvage this. But I think you're right. Giving unfettered access or substantial access as compared to like a 1-hour sit down, it was unlikely that you were going to come away with a pure puff piece. And so then that just didn't. I don't know if it made the outcome any different. I think he probably would have been fired regardless, but maybe
you don't
it made
think
it swifter.
So? I think it definitely made a difference. I think he could
Really?
have argued his way out of, I'm sure after 18 months, there are people at the top thinking, all right, maybe this guy isn't so great. But I think that article 100% sealed the deal. And that was an unforced error. Nobody made you do that. You did it all
Mm,
on your own. And probably you did it out of an ego move. You wanted there to be a big, splashy profile about you in the Atlantic. And you thought if I give them unfettered access, it's going to make them like more excited about doing this piece with me. Whatever. I
right.
mean,
I'll seem
truly,
more human.
yeah. It just, to me, just terrible, terrible judgment. Okie dokie. Okay. All right, folks, that's it for this week. As always, we hope you are loving the show. And if you are, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review.
And be sure to follow us on social. I'm Danny_D_MC on TikTok, and KJ is IM_KJ Miller. Thanks, everyone.